And here we go. All right, well, welcome again. Welcome to the closing reception of Living Lab, our fantastic exhibition that has been up since November. Has it been that long? And it's just been such a pleasure working with Laura and having this exhibition at Archer Gallery for the last couple of months. It's so animated and just so exciting. So today what we're going to do is just have a conversation between Laura and I, and we would love for you all to be involved as much or as little as you'd like. If you just want to kind of tune in and just listen to what we're saying, you're welcome to. If you would like to participate and ask questions and be a part of the conversation, we encourage you to do that as well. And feel free to use your audio, and then also if you want to use the chat, if you don't feel comfortable using audio, you're welcome to just use the chat function. Many of you know me already. My name is Michelle Raymond. I'm the director of Archer Gallery and Clark Art Talks at Clark College here in Vancouver, Washington. This is Laura Hanji Kim, our fantastic, like I said, exhibiting artist. Her exhibition and ongoing project Living Lab will be up on archergallery.space through this weekend. So it will be archived and it will be up kind of indefinitely. So you'll be able to find it on there, but it won't be linked from the front page after this weekend. So make sure to go check it out, spend some time with it if you haven't already. And we're really excited to have Laura again here talking with us. We've done an art talk with Laura and we've done a workshop, both of which have just been really fantastic and full of great participation from students and colleagues and peers and strangers alike. And we've had a really good time with it. So just a couple notes before we get started. A few things. Our next exhibition with Archer Gallery is going to be starting on February 19th, opening with Yulia Pinkeusevich's solo exhibition, Calm Under the Waves in the Blue of My Oblivion. And it should be a really fantastic, very immersive show. Again, all virtual. We're all virtual this year through June, which is kind of fantastic in a way because we can all just join in together wherever we are. It's very accessible. So definitely come back for that. The art talk for that is going to be also at noon, Friday, February 19th. So come back for that. Have a conversation with Yulia, hear more about her practice. And then beyond that, we have Clark Art Talks. And we have two more this winter term scheduled. The next one is February 26th with Robert Minervini, and he's a fantastic San Francisco Bay Area painter and muralist, really fabulous work. After that, in March, we have Jeffrey Augustine Sanko, who is a installation performance-based artist. He does kind of everything. Really, really great work. So please come back for that as well. And then we have more scheduled out even into the spring, 3 more talks in the spring term as well. So keep checking back on archergallery.space. Everything's on there, including recordings of past art talks. So feel free, if you're a professor, if you're an educator in any way and you want to incorporate these into your curriculum and lesson plans, feel free to do it. It's open to the public and free always. I want to say some thank yous to my art department, who are just fantastic always in supporting me and our programming at Archer, and as well as the Associated Students of Clark College, ASCC. They have funded us through this year and forever. So thank you to them for that. So yeah, I want to get into it and just have kind of this great casual conversation with Laura. So yeah, I mean, we were kind of talking about how to start this out, and I thought, why not just start at the beginning? Why not start where Laura kind of gained her interest in art in general. So I'm just going to throw it out to you, Laura, and we'll just kind of go back and forth. And if anybody wants to chime in, go for it.
We're gonna toss it back and forth. Thank you everybody for joining today, and thank you, Michelle, for inviting me, and also just trusting my instincts to do something, and especially trusting me with the workshop component. That was pretty rad.
That was so fun. How many of you were here for that? I definitely know a few of you were.
I think there were quite a few people here who participated.
Kevin.
Yep. Yeah. And that was a game changer for me personally. And it really brought, I think, the exhibition to life. And Yeah, I think thanks for participating for those who have. And to start at the beginning,
All the way back.
where did I get, why do I love art? Art's awesome. I always grew up with art around me, and I owe it to my parents a lot. My mom loved the piano. She played piano for a very long time, and my dad loved jazz. And so we were always surrounded with music growing up, and a lot of museums, just being exposed to it, and also made it very approachable to me. Like art was just very part of like my blood. Even before I knew what I was doing. And part of going into video was interesting because my dad was obsessed with the VHS camcorder that he had. So I have a lot of like personal home footage that because he was obsessed with it and would make these like weird VHS like clips of me dancing or like talking to dolls and like doing these things and introducing like here is a painting I did. And primarily the purpose was to send to my grandparents who are in Korea. So for me that kind of like mediated version of me being sent through the ether and shipped abroad by means of physical like media itself was a big part of me growing up. And so I'm not super surprised that I got really interested in video and performance because I realized I was doing it for a very, very long time, like as Picasso would say, my whole life. um, Not a big fan of Picasso, but anyways.
Your brother is also a musician too, right?
Yeah, he makes K-pop music in Korea, and so it turned out to become like a weird family like congealant, I think. So yeah, without that, it just kind of got like before I could even define what I was doing what I was doing, and I think it's just amazing how that kind of drive or gut instinct to make just kind of brought me to this point where I can still do what I love doing and have more people to share. And so in a way, it's like because art is such a familial activity for me, the fact that it brings people together and that we're all here to we're not just talking about me, we're talking about like the conversation that hopefully that I have brought to the table. And so we're all family here.
Yeah.
And yeah, feel free to also just chime in and jump and ask questions or interrupt, because I think interruption is the best, or digression is probably the most effective way of communication.
Yeah. I mean, I saw my sister who's here, laughing when you were saying the video camera because our dad did the same thing when we were growing up, and it was always around. And I wonder, I've never thought about it before, but until just right now, but I wonder how much that really influenced me going into the arts as well. It's just this performative aspect of whether or not you want it in your life. I definitely was running from it every time he would bring it out. But I wonder if it was something that, because it was so theatrical and we were so kind of interconnected in that way, and screens, like thinking about familiarity with screens and technology and incorporating that into our lives. How if we wanted to embrace that, or if we wanted to kind of push it away, and maybe for me that was something maybe that I was like, yeah, let's embrace this, let's embrace the weirdness of this, kind of situation as you're growing up. So
I love the
interesting.
word weirdness too. I think weirdness is underrated.
Yeah.
I like to talk about weirdness as for the sake of weirdness. Why can't it just be something bizarre and odd? And why does it always have to have some sort of statement that goes with it? And I think, yeah, I'm glad you brought up that word. I just kind of gravitated towards that somehow just now.
Yeah.
But
And I was
yeah.
thinking about it too in relation, we were talking earlier about, does art have to be academic? Does it have to, have a research-based, like rigorous practice behind it in order to be considered art? Can it just be weird? Can it just be this thing that comes out of you as an expression, something that we, can just do as play? And thinking about being playful or whimsical or just kind of a form of escape. can that be art? What do you think? What do you think in relation to your own practice in this exhibition in particular?
Yeah, I think again, academic is just another word. And I think when academic melds in with institutions, it turns into something else because then it starts to like root itself into all these really complicated.
Uh-oh, do we lose Laura? Is she frozen for everybody else too? Yeah. Okay. Give her a second. She froze when we were doing a test earlier too, so she'll be back in a second. Have you all seen the exhibition? Has anybody not seen it? Can you raise your hand or yeah? I might bring it up, just share my screen just so people can see it while she's coming back in case, you know, other folks haven't checked it out yet.
History.
Oh, she's kind of coming back in a little bit here and there. So this is the exhibition. She'll find out when she comes back in. She's been frozen this whole time. But yeah, this is the exhibition. You can go to archergallery.space, obviously, and go check it out anytime. We've been entirely virtual this whole year, so it's been definitely, you know, kind of this whole new challenging world of trying to figure out how to hang exhibitions, install exhibitions that have been entirely virtual. Hi, Laura, you're back.
I'm back.
Yay.
Sorry about that happening earlier. The moment everything freezes. Oh,
Yeah.
sweet.
So I'm just going through and showing everybody your exhibition if they haven't seen it. I think most people have, but a few people haven't. So I just wanted to kind of walk through while we were getting you back into our Zoom world here together. But yeah, we've been kind of setting it up. I really wanted to kind of install Laura's show in kind of a really clean way and set it up. We talked about, you know, Laura and I together hanging it in kind of a, almost like a bookshelf fashion. I think a bookshelf kind of came up at some point.
Yeah. The Risby's like nature lab, I think, was a big inspiration.
Yeah.
And kind of like an I Spy book. And each of these objects are like objects of inspiration or things I like to call as collaborative objects or things. And so this is like a tip of the iceberg. And speaking of where I left off from in terms of the presenting philosophy or philosophy, Feelosophy, as a framework. I'm proposing it as kind of like a concept or a framework for others to be able to explore as well. And so I kind of like this kind of airy, like open book, open map style, kind of like bookshelf style feel that it has as a way of like archiving my ideas or archiving specifically what kind of attachments I have towards these things that I'm exploring. And so
Yeah, I love it as like kind of a collection of objects, a collection of things. I've always been really interested in piles of things, in collections of things, and that this compulsion I think that humans have to just collect similar things to each other and then do what? I don't know, put them in boxes, you know, arrange them in certain ways, put them on a mantle. Why do we do that? It's really interesting. And then to kind of go through, you know, and each of these you can kind of pull out and, you know, experience a whole different kind of world. I love the nose one. I think, you know, over time has become kind of my favorite one. And it, you know, the music, I think, and the song and the dancing and sorry, probably. Is that really loud? Sorry, guys. This is very loud.
yeah,
Good.
it's so interesting how like I don't know where they come from. They just speak to me, and I think that's what a lot of these pieces are coming from. It's like these whimsical or objects of curiosity, or like things that just kind of that just look odd suddenly. It's kind of like similar to when you say the same word over and over again, or you write the same word over and over again, suddenly it loses its meaning and you're like, what the hell is that? Like, I don't, what? today I was writing a little like a small song about like a fish, and the more I wrote the lyrics down, the less it felt like it started getting so detached from what a fish is and the shape of the words. And I think a lot of these pieces have that kind of similar effect for me, where it's extremely embodied objects, and they have meaning of their own, but I like to think of them differently so that we can reimagine what they mean. And this could either be from a personal standpoint or more on a collective perspective, where I'm working with these objects or working with these things around me. And so,
Yeah, I want to try to play it and see if it works. I'm sorry
oh
if
yeah.
it's too loud. Just find out in a second here. Is that okay? A little bit better than it was? Yeah, okay, good.
I got the nose for you. Or do you got the nose for me? I got the nose for you, baby. Now tell me, do you got the nose for me? I got the nose for you. Or do you got the nose for me? I got the nose for you, baby. Now tell me, do you got the nose for me?
Yeah, I mean, I think they're just such like beautiful little worlds. Like each one of them, you get to pull out and kind of go through this process of whatever experience, whatever day you're kind of having, pull it off of the bookshelf in a way, and just have your own moment with it. And a lot of these songs, obviously, I've curated the show, so it's like I've spent a lot of time with each of these works, but they've gotten stuck in my head. I sing them constantly, and I feel like the movement, like I just feel so connected to the movements and like the dances, and it really, I think, you know, in a year, and especially the last few months, when there's just been so much noise and pain and loss and trauma that we're all kind of processing and going through, that I feel like this show has just been such a light. And it's something that I, at least personally, feel like I've been able to kind of visit as an escape, as a moment of as a breath in a way. And for it to kind of be something that hopefully other people, you know, are allowed to kind of go back and visit and revisit and kind of get different experiences out of, and pick a new, you know, pick a new object this time and go into a whole other world.
Yeah, thank you. That really makes me happy to hear that it brought you joy or some sort of wonderment into your world. I think a lot of these pieces definitely hold, like a lot of these I think, except for maybe one piece, the bread piece, all of them were made recently last year in 2020. And there's much more that could be added now at this point, but part of it is these pieces are funny and humorous, but they hold a lot of baggage for me personally. They're very autobiographical. It speaks from a lot of the things that I had to go through over the past 2 years, and so they're heavy in many ways. But it's like each time I made a piece, it's like I'm writing with it and writing with my body. I'm interacting with these things and reorienting my world. And so if that resilience comes through and you feel that, that's great for me. I'm happy. That makes me really happy to hear. And so, you know, like I talk about this kind of idea of philosophy, and that's where it all starts for me, like as this concept of these are philosophic artifacts. They are things that that I write with and write with my body, and it's kind of like this open map idea where I feel like there's no beginning or ending, and I need to tend to what I'm going through, my emotions, my feelings, to be able to be more empathetic and compassionate towards the subjects that I work with. And so it's complicated. And I think I'm very much interested in serving all different types of emotions. What does that mean? how as artists, where does our idea start? And this comes from this whole point when sometimes I just don't want to do anything, right? Like I can't do anything. I don't want to make. I just feel terrible. Well, that in itself is something to look at and think about. And I think it's also interesting in terms of a way to resist what productivity means, resist what a good idea is versus a bad idea. And so I think for me, starting and working with emotions has been really interesting for that reason. And for that reason, that's my philosophy. But of course, everybody else can have a way of tapping into what they're going through and create based on the foundations of who they are and where they come from and what they've gone through. And yeah, and there is a link to the philosophy writing. It's still in progress. That's my PhD dissertation for my practice-based research. It's I still dread. It's kind of like PhD student, what are you working on? And I'm like, give me a break.
Yeah, I wanted to actually like segue and be like, what are you working on now, Laura? But
philosophy. But yeah, I think that's what I like about it. I feel like I'm constantly wrestling with writing, but again, it's not just the writing aspect. It's also I'm wrestling with myself, and so thinking of my body or myself as multiples, as kind of like seeing the plurality in bodies, seeing how nonlinear it is, how non-binary it can be, and yeah, so I feel like I'm trying to just let my body write for itself. And so yeah, it may not translate, and I think I'm totally okay with that, because again, I'm a big proponent for uncertainty and nuance. And so yeah, it's tricky, but yeah, that's I feel like where I'm heading at the moment.
yeah, maybe should we ask other people what
Yeah.
their kind of interpretations were if they've spent some time with the site and your work? What do y'all think about this exhibition, Living Lab, in this iteration, or if you've experienced it in other iterations, in Laura's practice? What are your thoughts about it?
Yeah, ask me anything. AMA. Otherwise, I might start asking all of you questions. What did you have for lunch?
Yeah,
I have
I
a
mean,
question.
oh, go ahead. Yeah.
Yes.
I just sort of noticed in this last one, the idea of the specimen jar again, you're putting the nose in this jar. And I feel like that's a theme that shows up in a couple of your pieces, like either the idea of like a snow globe or like a specimen jar. And like the idea of like, I don't know, something bigger looking in. I don't know. I just wanted to ask about what that reoccurring theme might be about. And then the second part of the question is, what does the chain say that you're wearing today?
Oh, first of all, the chain is it's Sharing Turtle. It's a collaboration I have with my dear friend Libby Rose Striegel. It's her birthday, by the way, so she's not here, but happy birthday.
Happy birthday, Libby.
She
She was here last time, I think.
Yeah, she was helping moderate getting the Zoom bomber out of our
Oh, that's
talk.
right. Were you here? Some of you were here probably for the
Libby
Zoom
was
bomber.
helping out with that, yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, and that's interesting. Jar, thanks, Katie. That's really sweet. Yeah, I think that's interesting, like jar or kind of containers or these things where I contain things, are you saying? Like, or like putting things like and zooming out and looking at it. Yeah, that's just kind of like, I think I get really fixated onto things. I like to zoom in and then kind of remove it from its other things that contextualize it. So I guess if I were to read into it, it would be this kind of, here's a container, let's see what happens if I remove this jar and put it in a different space. What does that look like? And so, and even in terms of like, yeah, like I do that to myself too when I make, that's I think why I use green screen a lot or some sort of visual effects, because that in itself is like I'm putting myself through this specific program that has specific like default settings, and I'm containing myself in it and then see what happens when I'm in that space. And Yeah, I think the idea of the whole living lab is that, okay, what happens when your body becomes a laboratory and you experiment and kind of push the boundaries of um, how it can be seen, what it can do. And I guess it does extend to that notion. And I just think science objects are cool too. Who doesn't like a good vitrine? We love like putting things on pedestals, and so it's, again, and if you think about it, I think it's a subversion of, you know, what could be seen as very scientific, and what happens when you put that scientific object in a more imaginative or like humanistic, creative, or some sort of artistic field. What happens? What changes? And ultimately, like, I see myself as a storyteller, and so yeah, containers are easy to work with because they're contained.
I love that it's like both like, you know, taking the idea of the container, which, you know, kind of controls everything. It's a controlled environment, right? And everything's kind of organized and, you know, put into one, you know, kind of tangible, holdable, accessible, you know, object. But then, you know, the living lab, I think your vision for it is so expansive, right? And overlapping, and you want, you know, multidisciplinary, you know, kind of different genres kind of coming together and forming this work in this body that's constantly in progress and constantly changing and moving. But then there's also these containers within it. So
Yeah.
it's like kind of this push-pull tension that's being created there.
It kind of reminds me of like, actually, to think about it, Brad, you instigated this. Like, I during our workshop, those who were there, everybody drank a glass of water, right? And every container was different. And we talked about how the way everybody experiences emotions is different. The way you would language what that emotion is different, because your body itself is a container, a vessel that holds these experiences, and specifically like feelings or emotive experiences. And so yeah, like it makes me think about that for some reason. I didn't really see the container in that
Yeah, no, you're right.
process, but yeah.
I'm thinking about what like containers in general. I love this conversation, actually. I love like kind of breaking this down. But like the limitations of a container, right? Like it can only hold so much, and there's a limited amount of space within it, right? So if it gets to the top and it gets toppy, it's going to just pour over the side. And yeah, maybe a living lab is something like that, like a container that's trying to hold something, but it's just expansive.
It
So
can't hold anything.
it can't hold
Yeah,
anything.
it's useless
Yeah.
at the end of the day, and I love it for that reason.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's liminal, right? I mean, there's a time expiration to every living lab, and so it's a matter of how you archive it and how the story is told down the line. Yeah, and you know, all the works that are there are in the past, but we're experiencing it in the present moment, and so that kind of overlap I find really interesting.
Yeah, for sure. Anybody else want to add anything? Anything about the exhibition that you want to chat about?
Or your favorite piece. Oh, Lori.
Hello. It's really great to be here. And I guess that's it. That's not my question though. I was just thinking about how your work seems to show how even conventional science is a kind of a default setting, or whatever you just said. And I wondered if you had anything to say about how you are pushing the boundaries of what is considered science, and which in a way is about like what kinds of knowledge get counted as knowledge and who gets counted and under what circumstances.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's kind of a Lori question. I'm sorry.
Yeah, it's a very Lori question. I love it. Thank you. I think for me, the way I approach it is yes, I am using more of the stereotypical traditional scientific model as something to reimagine, because I think it's the easiest opposite spectrum. When you think of science, okay, laboratory, okay, beakers, petri dishes. And I find that hilarious because like it's like a clip art. If you search on Google, look at science lab, that's what's going to come up. And I think what's really interesting for me is the kind of like citizen science-ships, the amateur scientist, the everyday scientist who puts like Mentos in like a Coca-Cola bottle and see it explode and being really excited, and then going to look at, oh, I'm so curious, what is this chemistry? What is that? And so for me, yeah, I think I talked about this before a long time ago, but like, yeah, or maybe it was in a conversation with another artist, but yeah, like the kitchen or different places that, or like on the street, you look into like, oh, you found a rock. Cool. What rock is that? Oh, there's a pigeon. What pigeon is that? And I think that entry point is where the kind of the sparks for scientific inquiries to happen. And what the arts can do is to kind of help kind of narrate that and kind of unfold that. And so I'm not presenting anything new by any means, but I think I'm just interested in re-examining what we consider science. And then again, if we artists work with scientists, how can we make it more interesting and accessible? And it's a complicated question, I think, because then, yeah, like again, it goes back into the institution and where does knowledge making happen, and how can we see it differently? And I'm just one person, but I think, again, the beauty of being an artist or being in this space to be able to share these concerns is that I could create an army of me or more people to be able to have that conversation. And so, yeah, that's why I think I like to just throw around the word lab. And it's complicated because you wrote a lab book. But yeah, for me, I like using that word as a as a metaphor for a lot, as a world, another world to explore.
Yeah, I mean, I think all of that's so like great to kind of think about in terms of like the overlapping of disciplines and like how science and art do in a lot of ways share processes, I think, and systems of kind of coming to realizations or, you know, ideas at the end, or solutions. And, you know, I was just kind of looking through some of my questions that I had for you and thinking about your artist statement and how you say in it that you're kind of striving in your work to attend to the everyday with a sense of wonderment and magic. You know, I was kind of thinking about the word magic and how science and magic kind of don't exist together, and then sometimes they do. And so kind of thinking about your relationship with your work in relation to, and I think every artist and probably every scientist too, not to like kind of, you know, speak for everybody, but I think there's something about wonder that's related to all of our practices. And that's kind of an overlapping, you know, kind of similarity between them. But I kind of wonder, yeah, what is wonder, you know, in relation to your practice? And you're talking about the everyday and bringing in the everyday, and obviously kind of creating something out of nothing is such a beautiful thing and such a really specific thing to, I think, the arts and sciences. That is just such a, yeah, I mean, it's glorious. I love being a part of it for that reason alone, you know? Yeah. So I guess, yeah, whatever you want to say in response to that.
I think art is magic.
Art is totally magic. I totally agree.
I think it doesn't feel like magic when I do it, but when I see other people do it, it seems magical. And there's a wonder to that, I think, but again, as any magician, magic requires skill and finesse. You need that techne aspect, you need that kind of like practice, and not just to get better in terms of technicalities, but with your language, your voice, and you're like, so honing your voice so that even if you're not speaking the same, thing, like you can at least, like, people will start understanding you. And so I think there's a lot of imagination that's associated to magic, and I think that process is wonderful. And yeah, it's a yeah, it's something. It's but I love that word. I just keep thinking about Lisa Frank in my head for some reason. But some sort of like uh yeah.
Something that's greater than ourselves, and I think that that's something that I've been striving for kind of my whole life. I'm not a religious person at all, but I think there's something about the magic of art, and again, kind of creating something out of nothing, and to create wonderment for not just myself, but for others to witness and view and experience, is something that I feel so connected to, and I want to continue doing for my whole life. Yeah, I think it's almost like I talked to you about it, and it's kind of like a moral compass for me, like something that I kind of direct my life based on. And I see you kind of doing that too. I do wonder, like, kind of looking at your work and kind of thinking about it in terms of the energy. There's so much energy in all of your pieces. And I'm kind of wondering, like, can you talk us through, the process of creating one of these pieces, like where you start, and kind of, you obviously have collaborators as well, and kind of, yeah, is there a certain way that you start all these pieces? They come at it from different angles, different ways.
I'm gonna do the cheesy thing. It's like, it comes from you, all the grids. Yeah, I think it's really, it doesn't, I think over time I've learned that it's not from me. It's from me interacting with others and then interacting me through others. And so I think there is uh, that energy is really feeding off of or reflecting upon others that I am around. And so it's great if it's, I think there is that kind of like maybe life energy probably, or the power that each thing or person or environment that I collaborate with has, that energy that I'm able to bounce off of or bounce back. And I feel like a lot of what I do is just highlighting, accentuating, and helping them express more of what's happening. And so it's like a facilitator in a way of energy. But yeah, like it's I'm glad if you saw the light in it. And I think it just, it depends on who sees the piece and how they, um, how, what they get out of it. And I think this kind of conversation actually brings me energy. It's because ultimately you want your work to instigate conversation. You want to be able to have some sort of, I mean, communities too, right? Like you're able to build communities through having these kind of gatherings and being able to bring people into a subject based on this kind of anyways. So I think that's probably the energy that we're feeling. It's that the collectivity that, or the power that art has to bring people together.
Yeah. Could you talk us through, like, how, like, is there, technically kind of like a specific formula to creating any of these, or is it just kind of like you pull from one thing and then you pull from another thing, and then organic?
Right. I think it's having a body, having feelings, having, or having some sort of like maybe like compassion or trying to be compassionate. And then that allows you to be open to other people's worlds, other things, objects around me. And so, and then channeling that probably, I don't know. But I think there's a lot to be unpacked for sure, regards to what that means. But ultimately I think I can't do it alone is probably the moral of the story. And everything in the exhibition is not just me, myself, and I, but it is me and world others, and then me with the world.
And I guess in the middle of that, like, how do you feel about, ownership or authorship of your work? Do you claim the whole thing? Do you allow others to claim credit for it? How does that work?
It's a good question. I have most of my work is online, and so it's highly accessible. I think authorship wise, I work with so many different media or like people and things that other people have made that it gets tricky for sure. But I would like to say, yeah, I proposed this concept, this idea, and I think in the internet age, it's hard to say that you're the soul maker. And I kind of like to be departing from that artist is the soul maker or the author model. And so, yeah, it's tricky territory because there's the legal parts of owning something versus conceptually owning something. And so, yeah, I think personally, I like that's I think why I like to use the word collaboration. We're co-authoring most of the time.
Yeah, fantastic. Well, we should start wrapping up. We have just a few minutes left here. Laura has to leave at 12:50. So does anybody have any final questions? Anything that you want to ask her about the exhibition or anything else that we've talked about today? Anything else you want to say, Laura?
Thanks for being here, and also it's easy to reach me. I'm highly reachable, and so feel free to email or social media me. And again, I think this exhibition was really interesting because it was open during very specific times, and yeah, it was just nice to be able to meet new people and also to kind of share, be able to share what I do still through this medium and very site specific in a way. Yeah, thank you very much. Thanks, Lori.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, thank you all so much for coming. If you do have any more questions for Laura, feel free to, you can email us through the website if you want to. I'm sure most of you, I think, already know Laura, and you can get in touch with her through Instagram, social media, or through email. But yeah, thank you all so much for coming. And if you haven't checked out the exhibition yet, please do so, archergallery.space. Spend some time with it, and you know, yeah, whatever interpretations you have for it, feel free to share them with us if you want. I totally get joy out of it. So it's a really pleasurable experience for me personally. And I've just been so happy to have you and to work with you these past maybe 6 months we've been working together on this. So this is kind of the culmination of all of this hard work, and I'm really proud of it. I'm really proud of the exhibition and all of these pieces coming together. So thank you so much, Laura. Thank you so much for being here. Thanks to everybody for coming. Please come back if you want. Check out future exhibitions, art talks, etc. Again, everything's updated on the website regularly. So archergallery.space. Yeah, thank you all so much. Any final questions or comments? Anything anybody wants to say?
I'll stick around for another 3 minutes if you want to hang out and chat. But thank you for being here, everyone.
Thanks all.
Thank
I'm going to
you.
stop the recording now, but thank you. Thank you, Laura.
Thank you.